How's it going, guys? As you can see, my cat Elsa's trying to get away as fast as possible, so you're not going to get a long look at her. But here she is. Say hello. All right, so here it is. You guys today are going to take you're going to take a summative on chapter 9, okay? So what I did was I went into the online test and just checked it out, and I wrote down exactly what types of problems you guys are going to see. All right, I'm going to help you out right now and just kind of go through what you will see on your test online. Okay. So first thing you're going to see is the first 3 questions ask you to solve quadratic equations by by graphing, but we could do it by factoring. So I want to show you that real quick. So on my screen, here's an example. All right, it's going to ask you to graph, but you don't have to do that. Okay, you can kind of use whatever method you want. I don't care what method you use. All right, but it's going to give you instructions to use specific methods. But again, I don't really care what you use. All right, and I'm going to show you actually graphing doesn't make much sense because we could just factor something like this. All right, so if we take a look at this trinomial that we see, I see nothing in front of x squared, and that's exactly how it's going to be on your test. All right, so what I would do here is this. I would just factor this. All right, I would say -3 on top, -3 on top, and then 2 on the bottom, and figure out what are my numbers that add to 2 and multiply to -3. Add to 2, multiply to -3 would be 3 and -1. All right, and what I can do now is go x plus 3 in parentheses, x minus 1, and set this equal to 0. And I could see what makes this expression equal 0 is -3. And what makes this expression equal 0 is +1. All right, so those are my answers here. All right, so number 1 on your test, it's going to ask you to use graphing. You don't have to do that. All right, we can just factor it. So here's how to do that. Okay, let me go through another example quick, just like this one. So these are really similar to your test, guys. I'm telling you right now. So if we wanted to do this one, we wanted to factor this, I could just move the 16 to the other side. All right, so I would add 16. Okay, and I would go like this. All right, so if I've added 16 to the other side, it's now +16. And the bottom's -8, right? Kind of went through this with you already. But what 2 numbers would work? -4 and -4. Okay, at that point, I would write my 2 binomials, but it would say the same thing, x minus 4, x minus 4. So there's really only one solution in this case. What's going to make that equal 0? Just +4. Okay, so there's only one solution for a problem like this. Okay, and finally, let's look at this last one. Here's what I would do. I would take this. I always want my first term to be positive in order to factor. Okay, so I would add x squared to the other side. All right, and here's the deal. Check this out. So when I try and factor this time, 5 and 4, right? I'm trying to find numbers that multiply to 5. 5 is a prime number, so the only factors of 5 are 5 and 1, okay? And there's no way to manipulate this so that it adds to 4. So if there's a problem like this where we can't figure out factors, that means there's no solution. Okay, so if we looked at this, when they graph this thing, it never crosses the x-axis. Okay, so remember, what we're finding really is we're finding x-intercepts, and this doesn't have any. Okay, so again, this one would be no solution. All right, so again, 1 through 3 on your test, remember what I said. Just factor, so much faster than graphing. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. So numbers 4 and 5. Numbers 4 and 5, we're using square roots to solve. Okay, so let's go to 9.2 quick. Just going to review this really fast because this was probably one of the easier ones. All right, so if I wanted to solve this, right, using square roots, this is number 4, just like number 4 on your test. Okay, we would add 27 to the other side. We would divide 3, and then we would take the square roots, and remember there's 2. A positive and a -3 as our answer. Okay, that's just like number 4 on your test. All right, now number 5 looks something like this. Okay, where we have that expression inside of parentheses squared equals a number. What we want to do right now is right away take the square root of both sides. okay, to get rid of the squared. Okay, we get positive and negative 5. Now we're going to add 1 to the other side. Add 1 to the other side, and that would give us positive 6 as one solution and negative 4 as another. Okay, that's just like number 5 on your test. Okay, number 6. Number 6 says to complete the square and then factor. So I'm going to tell you now, when I read the directions on the actual test, it didn't ever tell you to factor. Okay, so all it said on the test is it just gave this instruction of complete the square for each expression. Okay, it never says to factor, but you have to. All right, so I don't know why it doesn't say that, but you're going to have to factor too. Okay, so in this problem, let's remember what we're doing when we complete the square. We take half of 6. Okay, we take half of 6 and we square it to get 9, and we add that to the end of the binomial I started with. Okay, so this is completing the square. This is our answer for completing the square. Then we have to factor it. So remember, that's just using our x again, trying to figure out what multiplies to 9 and adds to 6. And I told you guys there's a trick to that. It's always this number when we take half that b term. Okay, so this is what your answer should look like for number 6. Okay, it should look something like this: a trinomial set equal to a binomial to the second power. All right, just know that that's what your answer should look like for number 6 on your test. All right, number 7. Number 7 says to solve using completing the square. Now I'm going to remind you guys, you don't have to use completing the square to solve. You don't have to use any method, a specific method. You can use anything you want. And let me also remind you that you could use the quadratic formula to solve any quadratic equation. Okay, so if you want to use the quadratic formula the whole time, go right ahead. Okay, but I am going to show you how to solve this by completing the square and just remind you. Okay, now to complete the square, I need this equation to be in the correct form. That correct form looks like this. Okay, I need the x squared plus 8x on one side, and I need the constant on the other. Okay, at this time, I'm going to complete the square. So take half of 8 and square it to get 16, and we have to add that 16 to both sides. All right, now I'm going to factor this trinomial. That's where I get x plus 4 squared equals 36. Remember, I add the 16 to both sides. Now I take square roots, positive and negative 6. Now I subtract 4 to solve this thing. Okay, giving me 2 and negative 10 as my answers. Okay, so again, that's how you complete the square and solve using completing the square. You could remember, guys, if we wanted to from the start, we could have subtracted 17 to this side to get it set equal to 0. Then you could actually factor it, which is really fast because there's nothing in front of x squared. Obviously, you should be seeing there are many methods to solving quadratic equations. All right, and that's what this test is on. Okay, now let's move on. So that's number 7. All right, numbers 8 and 9 are using the quadratic formula. And honestly, you guys did so much with this on IXL, and it probably took you a really long time, and I kind of apologize for that activity, but that's what you're going to have to use for numbers 8 and 9 on your test. Okay, quadratic formula. Okay, and number 10 says to use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions. All right, so if we remember, we just did this yesterday. Okay, the discriminant, I'm just going to run through this real quick. You did enough with IXL on this too, so this should be easy. All right, so the discriminant, remember from yesterday, b squared minus 4ac is the discriminant. We want to see, when we do that math, given the equation, does it come out to be a positive number? If so, there's 2 solutions. Does it come out to be 0? If so, there's 1 solution. Or does it come out to be a negative number? In that case, there are no solutions. Okay? So that's it. You are only doing 1 through 10 on this test. All right? There's 20 questions, but you are only doing 1 through 10. All right? This is your first summative grade through virtual learning. All right? So do me a favor and take your time. If you need to, at any point, rewatch any of the videos where I taught this stuff, do that. All right? Do that. It should be able to help you. But everything I just went through, guys, is exactly what you're going to see on this test. Okay? So if everything I just said makes sense to you, you're good to go. But again, if necessary, rewatch some of the videos. Okay? Use Google. All right? To look up other videos to help you. But otherwise, that's it. So you're going to go into big ideas at this time. You're going to go into big ideas. You're going to go to assignments. All right, and you're going to scroll down. You're going to see this right here. Chapter 9 summative is what you're working on today. All right, and that's your first test. So take your time and do well. Hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.